And that's about it for me. Now, buenos dias. I apologize for the lack of Spanish, but hopefully the information will make up for it. I have the 10th prediction for this morning's discussion, and it's sort of a simple prediction. And how many of you here are photographers? Like to take photographs. This is if you are a photographer, you'll know that this prediction is the wide-angle prediction. So we've talked a lot today about cloud and mobile and social and big data and all of these sorts of things. And what I want to do is put all of these things together. And so, whoop, is that me? Okay, I think we just shut off back there. So if you think about 2012, there are going to be some pretty amazing changes in the market. If you just look at the worldwide level, mobile devices, last year we were making a big prediction for 2011 that the number of mobile devices, tablets plus smartphones, would be larger than the number of PCs shipped, so that the units would be larger. And that, of course, happened. This year, tablets plus smartphones, more units were shipped than PCs. In 2012, on a worldwide basis, there will be less than 400 million PCs shipped. Guess how many smartphones plus tablets will ship? Over 800 million. So it's not even close. This year, it's not even close. So mobile devices. But what's interesting is 2012, we're predicting that the money, the revenue that comes in from the mobile devices will actually be larger than the PCs. So the PC people last year said, well, mobile devices are more units, but we still sell more in terms of money. 2012, that will no longer be the case. If you think about mobile apps, there will be 85 billion mobile apps downloaded in 2012. That's up from about 34 billion. I mean, think about that. And again, people who are counting money say, well, who cares? Only 8% of those mobile apps are paid for, right? So 92% are free. But those 8%, guess how much money that will mean in 2012 for mobile apps? It will be about $14 billion. That's larger than mainframe revenue in 2012. So just to put a perspective, so we're at a crossroads there. Again, you can think cloud. It's not as dramatic in terms of the size. Still today, if you were to compare cloud storage and cloud server and even cloud applications revenue compared to traditional IT, it's still only about 10% of the size of the traditional, but it's growing at about 5 times the rate. So you can see, we are on this fast approach. It hasn't crossed over yet, but getting there. And then, of course, social. We heard a little bit about social. To me, social, you look at all of the vendor acquisitions, they're buying social technology companies. You take a look at the enterprises, whether it's in retail or in healthcare, a government. Social technologies are now being thought of as not just Facebook and tweeting, but it's about a new middleware, a new foundation for modern processes, new innovative processes within industries. And of course, big data, finding the exciting insights, valuable insights out of all of the grains of sand. That is quickly becoming the next wave behind mobile and cloud as the important, almost an application of cloud and mobility and social. So you've heard a lot about what will happen already, but to me, I think it is exciting. You look at each of these things separately, and 2012 is going to be a very big year in each of them. So it's important if you have participation in these technologies or in the traditional technologies that these ones are disrupting, it's a very important year to get very good at these things. But as I said, my prediction isn't about these individually, it's about them together, right? So if you put all of these things together, these disruptive forces, my prediction is that in 2012, companies will not only be competing to win in 2012, they'll be competing to win in 2020. Right? So let me tell you a little bit what I mean by that, because when I've told that to people, they say 2020, that's 8 years from now. Who cares about 2020? And certainly in a bad economy, we're all struggling to survive, you can say that's too far out. But I want to share with you our perspective of why companies will either be on a good track to be winners in the IT industry in 2020, or they will be on a very strong track to be obsolete in 2020. So here's, we call this the third platform chart, and this may be the most important one that I show you today. And the idea is pretty simple. It's if you think about really going back 25, 30 years ago when the PC came in, right? So you're probably all going, oh no, not another waves of technology chat. I'll make this very brief, but if you think back at that point, 1985, the PC had already been out there for 4 years. So the PC was introduced in 1981. Local area network technology, so Ethernet was coming in. Relational databases were coming in. When you looked over the subsequent few years, client-server applications were being built on top of that new platform. And so we call that the second platform started really taking off in 1985. And when you think about the vendors in 1985, who were the leaders in the prior area, right? So you think about companies like, well, IBM certainly was one of those. IBM was a leader in the first platform. You know, they, were part of the companies that gave birth to the second platform when they introduced the PC, right? They made some big mistakes along the way and have recovered. But so IBM was there, HP was there, they're still around. But think about some other companies, DEC, digital equipment, Wang was a huge company, Culinet was the leader in independent software at the time. They were the leaders here. And then when they saw this new platform coming, they made big mistakes and they never recovered. So, this platform, if you think about the last 25 years, the entire industry has been built around, can we build interesting new things for consumers and enterprises to do with IT? People say, well, what's going to happen after cloud or after mobility? And I say the same thing that happened after the PC, which is, the PC and the technologies came in. We spent the next 25 years making a lot of money building things on top of that second platform. So why am I mentioning these platforms? Well, the reason is, as you can see up at the top, we think 2011 and 2012 are a very important time because when you put together those pieces we talked about, cloud, mobile, social, big data, those are not disconnected. We think of them as related ingredients, key pieces of what is now really, and I think obviously, becoming the third platform for our industry. The platform of technologies that for the next 20 years, all of us in this room will work with customers to figure out, well, how can we build valuable new things on top of this mobile, social, cloud-connected, data-intensive environment. And so that's our view, is that we're not just kind of looking at cool new technologies, but we're looking at a fundamental transformation in the IT industry. And so now you can maybe start thinking about why I think we're competing for 2020 as we look at 2012. If you look at 1985, we were in the exact same position. If you look at the top 10 IT vendors in 1983, 84, 85, or take a look at the top 20, over half of them were either out of business or on their way to disappearing by the time you got 10 years later. And the reason is they said things like PCs, too expensive, not secure enough, hard to manage. They don't connect well to all of our installed applications, so they're not even that important. And of course, what happened was the industry started building totally new things. And as we see in these transitions, it's not that this stuff goes away. It's just as you look at the next 10 years, all of these technologies will be growing at 5 to minus 5% a year, while these technologies are growing from 10 to 50% a year. So that by the time we get out to 2020, you know, the third platform technologies and all of the solutions built on top of them will be driving most of the growth. So let me get to what that means. When you get to 2020, again, maybe it's hard to think about that, but the industry will be almost $5 trillion, both IT and communications together. That's almost $2 trillion worth larger than it is today. And at that time, about 80% of all of the new growth in the industry at that time will be coming from either cloud services, the technology that supports cloud services, mobile devices, mobile applications, mobile networks, big data technologies, both the infrastructure and the analytics, social technologies, you know, sort of the trillions of things up at the top, so all of the sensors, the reaching out to the edge of the industry, and most importantly, up at the top, you can see the intelligent industry solutions. So that's our short phrase for, well, what are people going to build on top of this? So think about, you know, retailers using social technologies in mobile and cloud to do social mobile retail, which is, if you look at most of the new innovation in retailing, a lot of it is happening around that. Or you take a look at healthcare industry, taking you know, remote devices and cloud and delivering thousands, probably over the next several years, thousands of new telemedicine solutions. Or you take a look at transportation and municipalities and them using remote sensors in automobiles and buses and trains, the cloud, and big data analytics to do real-time traffic routing and optimization. You can imagine, and we can only pray that the financial industry, services industry, uses cloud and big data analytics to do a better job at risk management and risk assessment, right? So there'll be a lot of investment there. So that is what the next 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 20, 19 and 20, is going to be building up strength in, for you, building up strength in one or more of these pillars, technology pillars, and or building solutions, perhaps with partners, around vertical, around industry solutions, next generation industry solutions. If you think about it, going out to 2020, if you aren't establishing strong skills and competency in these core technologies in 2012, you're not going to be a participant in the growth that's building over the next several years. And again, that's the story of Wang. That's the story of DEC. You know, I have a funny story. I did a directions presentation in Copenhagen earlier this year, and I was mentioning this and the second platform and companies that made the wrong direction. And a gentleman came up to me afterwards, and he wasn't that young. He was maybe late 30s, and he was a marketing executive in a mobile software company. And he said, "Frank, thank you for sharing that history of the IT industry," which made me feel very old, by the way. But then he said, "You know, that company, Wang, I'd never heard of them before," which I don't know how many of you in the room, I mean, that's startling to me. I mean, they were a top 10 IT company 20 years ago. And, but he said this was the worst part. He said, "But while you were talking, I looked them up on Wikipedia. And, you know, they were a pretty big company." And I was thinking, wow, that is the worst type of failure, to make such bad mistakes that 25 years later, you're Wiki trivia, right? The only place that you can be found on the planet is on some page on Wikipedia. So I'd say it's going to be very important to make sure you're not going down the path to Wiki trivia in 2012. So, you know, that's the punchline. That's kind of the conclusion, if you will, is that in 2012, just like in 1985, vendors didn't know that they were making important decisions about the PC, about local communication technologies, about choosing a SQL database versus a hierarchical database, about a client-server architecture. You know, 1986, 87, these were the years when EMC was deciding to build large-scale storage based on PC disks. This is when SAP was deciding the next version of their ERP would use PCs as the front end, would be client-server. That was R3. You know, these were the decisions were being made right then and there that would make them successful for the next 10 and 20 years. One important point, it's almost a side point, but on that last chart, it was all about technologies and industries and new solutions on this third platform. A very important part of this prediction of competing in 2012 for the next 20 years of the industry is the important role of emerging markets. And in our worldwide predictions, we are predicting that in 2012, emerging markets IT spending will be about 28% of all IT spending. So almost 30% of all IT spending will be coming out of China, India, Latin America, you know, Middle East and Africa, Eastern Europe. And that's growing at 14%, we're predicting. So that's compared to developed markets, which are going to grow at about 4% or less. So you can do the math. It's quite a multiple. So it's the same kind of thing. It's like cloud. You know, small relative to the traditional, but growing so fast, we can see it's going to cross over before long. Here's the startling point. 53% of all of the new growth in IT in 2012 will be driven out of the emerging markets. So that's saying, well, if I look at, you know, how much more money in 2012 will customers spend than they did in 2011? So the new money, 53% of the new money is coming out of emerging markets. Okay, now some of you may be participating in these emerging markets, some of you may not. But even for those of you who are not, this is why it's, and by the way, another important point, sort of an emblem, another emblem is another crossover. Remember we talked about mobile devices. By the way, mobile data network spending will finally get larger than fixed data network fees. So all these crossover points in 2012. This is another one. China will pass Japan to become the number two largest market in the IT industry. But if you think about it, why is that important if you aren't in those markets? Well, number one, I think it says you probably should be in those markets, right? That's probably the point number one, and have some strong presence. But the other point is this, that emerging markets products and vendors are going to be pushing back. They're not just going to be playing in emerging markets. The vendors and the product design points are going to be coming right back into Western Europe, into the United States. And probably the best example of this is that in China and in India, in 2012, we're predicting that there will be smartphones, so if you will, iPhone-type devices that will come to market at less than $100. Okay, that's compared to about $400 or $500 for an iPhone, right? So a fraction of the cost. And the reason's obvious, because companies like ZTE, which is the 6th largest handset manufacturer in the world, based in China, they want to open up all of those customers in China, in India, in Indonesia, and they're not going to buy $500 smartphones. They might buy phones that are below $100. And so I think about Tim Cook, the new CEO of Apple, and I think about, well, what's he think? What does he need to be? 60 euro rather than 4 times that price. We don't like to pay 4 or 5 times the price if we can pay less. So the design points, low-cost design points for emerging markets are certainly going to be coming back in. You know, Chris Lewis, earlier, he had that great chart. Do you remember it showed the cost per user, basically, for the different telcos? And the lower left was all the, China and India telcos. The upper right were the US and Western Europe with heavy cost structures, right? The thing he didn't mention, I don't think he mentioned this, was if you think about, not only do the emerging markets players have cost advantages, because they've come in a little bit later, those telcos, if you look at the fixed telecom, mobile telecom to fixed telecom ratio In the developed markets, it's about 2 or 3 to 1, mobile to fixed. If you look in the emerging, it's about 10 to 1. 10 to 1, mobile to fixed. So it's not only cheaper, it's the right technologies. It's the third platform technology. So that's my other caution to you is don't just look at the technologies. You have to look at these markets, these geographic markets, and the vendors that are coming out of them, and the design points that are coming out of them. They're coming right back at us, everybody, and so we've got to be ready to compete with that. So I guess to bottom line, my prediction number 10, and I had a wonderful run in the Retiro Park this morning. That's a fantastic park. I didn't look at all like these guys. They're a lot faster than I am. But if you are a runner, you'll know that in the marathons, if you are not in that lead pack, you know, you don't suddenly make your move, you know, in a 26-mile race out at mile 20 or 21. You know, that first quarter of the race, you've got to be positioned in that lead pack or you're just going to lose. And that's my metaphor for the industry looking at 2012. The stakes are not just about 2012. It's about the next 10 years of opportunity are going to be staked out. People are going to be elbowing in 2012. And you know, people say, well, when we were doing our predictions, they said, well, Frank, your predictions for 2012, they look a lot like your predictions for 2011. You talked about mobile, cloud, social, big data, emerging markets. What's the difference? Well, it's the same topics, but there are big differences. If you think about what you heard earlier today from my colleagues, if you think about our worldwide predictions, mobile devices won't be competing versus PCs. They'll have won in 2012. If you think about cloud, there are going to be big platform battles between Google and Amazon and IBM and Microsoft, and now Oracle's jumped in, and Salesforce.com. These companies are battling for the best real estate in the market. Where are the next generation of third platform solutions going to be? Well, a lot of them are going to be in the cloud. Well, whose cloud platform or platform as a service is going to win? Those battles are going to be strong. If you think about social technologies, we talked about them now becoming kind of a nervous system for next generation industry solutions. Big data, key vertical competency. You know, the world doesn't need, there are going to be literally hundreds of thousands of new solutions built on top of the third platform. That's 10 or 20 times as many solutions as were built on client server. Because it's easier on a platform, a cloud platform, to build, you know, very focused solutions. The industry doesn't need, customers don't need hundreds of thousands of versions of ERP and CRM and email. Those are going to be very tightly focused vertical and sub-vertical solutions that are going to be built on top of this third platform. If you don't have industry competency, if you don't have vertical knowledge, you're not going to be competing in those solutions. Emerging markets, we talked about, it's already the center of growth, and it's the new center for design points within our industry. And then I think, importantly, the competitors, two categories. So the new players, Google and Amazon, yeah, they're disruptors, but you can't really think of them now anymore as disruptors. They are really, you know, in the lead pack of new leaders in the industry. I was just looking in the back row, I was looking through our latest cloud survey, and one of the questions we asked two questions. One was, well, which vendor do you trust most or think is most qualified to help you adopt the cloud? Guess who was number one? Google. Okay. And then it was a jumble between Amazon, and Microsoft, and then IBM and AT&T. So those of you who are telcos, it was in the US and in North America, it told me that's come up. Telcos are starting to come up as in the eyes of customers as players and people to think about. Same thing on platform. Remember I talked about the platform? Google, people say, hey, Google Apps, Google App Engine. That's not a real place to develop apps. Hey, guess what? IT leaders, customers are saying they think it might be. Okay, so pay attention. And then the other, of course, the incumbents. So that's probably most of us in the room. You know, the current leaders, the second platform leaders, if you will. Are we going to be third platform leaders? And I guess my comment is attention to this third platform transition, because now it's, you know, we laugh at DEC and Wang and Cullinet, you know, how dumb could they be, right? There was the PC. Now it's our turn. And let's hope 20 years from now people don't say how dumb we were, you know, when we take a look that we missed cloud and mobile and social and the things we need to do to position. There'll be some big crossroads moments for Microsoft, for HP, for SAP, even for Apple, the emerging markets. Are they going to do anything about those low price points? Android, another crossover point, Android apps will outnumber iPhone and iPad apps for the first time in 2012. Android's been catching up. They're going to pass Apple. That's because Apple's a little more closed. Are they going to loosen up their system or not? So a lot of crossroads moments. I guess my parting words to you would be, again, hopefully you will be among the guys, 20 years from now, will say, we were there. We saw the third platform. We succeeded. And you'll avoid being only found in Wikipedia. So with that, I'll hand off to my colleague, Luis, to finish us off. Thank you.